Very tall ladder.
Right? Ooh, very good answer. Mimi gets bonus points. That was good. They don't change the lights. God does. No, I mean, it must have happens at Temple Emmanuel also somehow, right? I mean,
Yeah.
somebody's job is to somehow change the unchangeable light bulb. Oh, well, Josie is convinced there's a ghost. From years ago, that there's a ghost here somehow or the other. So, just saying. Josephine Getling, who for years, has helped us out, but also over the years has helped out here, is convinced that there's a ghost somewhere in. Yeah, I imagine that. Why limit to one? Yes, no, I know. It is. It certainly seems that way, doesn't it? And it's not the one we're more familiar with, right? In which they're in a circular pattern, because there wasn't a single uniform version of it. I think that was a big part of it. All right. So, how's everybody doing? Good? Yeah, I was going to say, this is, right? Yeah. It's hard to believe that it's been 11 months. Yeah. Just make sure. I think you could be right about that. I like that image too, right? But isn't it interesting? Now you're going to be wondering about it the whole service, right? How is it that they changed the light bulbs? Yeah. I imagine that, it's that, or you have to get one of those, lifts that goes. This is thankfully one of the problems that we will not have to worry about back at the temple, as far as I can tell. Right, Neil? We don't have any impossible to reach lights. No, we've lost Neil. But, yeah, so I just want to make sure that Morty is, yeah, he's still on. I just wanted to make sure maybe that Morty's still here. All right. Keep an eye on timing. Looks good there. So, Cantor, how you doing?
Good. It feels like it's been a long time.
I know, that's what we were saying when I picked the Cantor up at the train station, which, by the way, if anybody ever thinks to go to the Bridgehampton train station on Memorial Day Friday, don't. Just don't. If you can avoid it, it's sort of a hellscape. They have a bar car? No. Really?
I would no.
Yeah.
It was a double-decker train.
I was just going to say, that's what I said to Lauren, is that at least now there are those double-decker trains, so there's more seats. I remember when I was a kid, I actually remember one Memorial Day weekend where I rode back to the city. What do you call the in-between between train cars? There's a word for... Foreboding, yeah. Well, it was me and like 4 or 5 other people all just, standing there for 2.5 hours just trying to get home. Don't recommend that either, that is for sure.
It's a very different experience from the bus, because they're very big on, you have to be quiet.
Oh, yes. No, the train is not I don't think they have any way of enforcing that,
no.
that particular reality, for sure. But we should congratulate Cantor Lauren, because she is done with her 3rd year of cantorial school.
Yeah.
She has officially passed all of her classes, or at least handed in all the things to pass all of her classes, right?
Thank you.
I don't know. I definitely feel that is deserving of applause. Thinking back to my time, that for sure is something that is deserving. And what was your hardest class, would you say?
I don't think any of them were particularly easy, so I don't know.
That's our self-deprecating rabbi, Cantor here. But
it was a lot of work and a lot of practicing and weekly work. So. Okay.
Well, we hope this doesn't feel like weekly work and more an opportunity to celebrate, that's for sure.
Yes. You don't require homework assignments.
I certainly try not to. Try very hard not to. So I think we'll get started, and to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom, and thanks so much for being here with us. I know that there's the shift in time, so always there's a bit of a challenge in those first couple of weeks till we get everything kind of locked in. And I know that we were hoping to be outside tonight, but the better part of prudence, I think, in this case is keeping us dry. But we're hoping next week we'll be able to be outside and be able to enjoy all of that. And we're certainly happy to have Cantor Lauren back with us. And we're going to start our service with an opening song?
Sure.
Okay, opening song.
We'll start on page 128. Yedi nefesh harachaman, Yedi nefesh harachaman, Neshochav decha el retzonecha, Neshochav decha na 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 el retzonecha.
We'll turn now to page 120 as we light and bless our Shabbat candles. I'll light, and the cantor will lead us in the blessing. Again, page 120.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. We'll turn now to page 130 to begin Kabbalat Shabbat at the very top of the page.
Let us sing unto God a new song. Let us sing unto God a new song. Now turn to page 131.
I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God and we'll all sing along. All the earth a new song unto God. Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz. Shiru Shir Chadash.
We'll now turn to page 132.
Or zaru ala tzadik uleishelev simcha. Or zaru ala tzadik uleishelev simcha. Simchu tzadikim Adonai lehodu lezecher kodsho. Simchu tzadikim Adonai lehodu lezecher kodsho.
We'll turn to page 134.
Zamru l'Adonai bechinor v'kol zimra. Zamru l'Adonai bechinor
We'll now go to the middle of page 135.
Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kosho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kosho ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu le'har kodsho.
We'll turn now to Lecha Dodi on page 138. A reminder, we'll do the first, second, fifth, and final paragraph, and for the last one, we'll stand and rise and face back towards the door we walked in through.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad Hishmi'anu el hamiuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad L'shemu tiferet v'tchila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelecha Vihi mekor haberacha Merosh mikedem nesucha Sof ma'aseh v'machshava tchila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela.
Fifth paragraph.
Hitoreri Ki ba'orech u'mi'uri shir daveri Kevod Adonai alayich nigdal. Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom ha'atzer ba'ala Gam v'simcha u'v'tzola Toch emunei am segula. Boi chala Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela.
Please be seated as we turn to page 140.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון ולזמר לשמך עליון. מזמור שיר ליום השבת טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון ולזמר לשמך עליון. להגיד בבוקר בחסדך באמונתך בלילות עלי הסוד ועלי נבל עלי היגיון וכינון מזמור שיר ליום השבת טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון ולזמר לשמך עליון צדיק אתה מאוד יפרח כארז בלבנון ישנא שתולי בבית אדוני בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו עוד ינובו מסבה דשנים ורעננים יהיו להגיד כי ישר אדוני צורי ולא עוולת עמו.
Now rise in body or spirit for the Chatzi Kaddish on page 144 and remain standing for the Baruch Hu on the next page.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה
אמן.
ילמד יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם לעמיה יתברך יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירה מעלמה ויאמרו אמן.
Remain standing as we turn to page 146.
Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Marechu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed Le'olam va'ed Ya 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 na 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 ya na na ya ya na 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 ya 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 na ya na 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 ya na na ya na na na.
Please be seated. We'll turn now to page 149 and we'll read together in English the second reading down from the top of the page. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over?
ומעביר יום ומביא לילה ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה אדוני צבאות שמו אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב הרבים.
Amen. Page 150.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל עמך אהבת תורה ומצוות חוקים ומשפטים אותנו למדת על כן אדוני אלוהינו בשוכבנו וקומנו נשיח בחוקיך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד כי הם חיינו לאורך ימינו ובהם נגד יומם ולילה מעבדתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני
Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo.
אוהב עמו ישראל שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד.
Please join me on the top of page 154. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. Read together now on the top of page 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. As we turn to page 158, Michamocha at the very top of the page.
So in honor of Memorial Day weekend happening right now, we're going to be singing Michamocha to a very, very familiar tune. So please join along with me. Michamocha Elim Adonai Michamocha Nedar B'Kodesh Noira Tehilot Osef Noira Tehilot Osef
We turn to Hashkivenu on page 160.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm. Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkivenu, Leshalom. Ve'hamidenu, Shomreinu lechayim, ufros aleinu, sukat shlomecha. Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkivenu, Leshalom. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm.
Turn now to page 162, Vishamar at the very top of the page.
Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השני שבת מי נפש, שבת מי נפש, שבת מי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
In a moment, we'll begin the Amidah together on page 164. I'll invite us now to rise in body or spirit. And from that point on, we'll continue silently as we always do. And as always, please go at your own pace. And if you're standing at the end, please be seated.
Adonai sefatai tiftach, ufi agit ilatecha. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו amen.
As we turn to page 371 to offer our Misha Berach this evening, before we think of those most closely connected to our community, of course, we continue to extend our prayers to the people of Ukraine, and we add to our prayers both the community of Buffalo and, of course, the community in Uvalde, Texas as well. And we hold all of them in our hearts and in our prayers tonight. And in addition to those that we know perhaps less directly, we think of those directly connected to our community who we're thinking of tonight as well. Sydney Ross, Roberta Kyle, Rivka Bat Yehuda Vabela, Eve Rose, Michoel Ben Hananya, David Kyle Klopman, Bensi Tepper, Samuel Moskowitz, Devorah Bat Sima, Michael Klinghofer, Norma Paulsack, Amy Cass, Steve Levine, Rivka Bat Rachel, Gail Gambino, Leah Bat Naomi, Gedalia Ben Sylvia, Lorraine Danis, David Dowling, Sivya Devorah Bat Francis, Myra Paskowitz, Chaim Leib, Deborah Block Kroll, Sylvia Orn, Michelle Sawicki, Francis Kirschman, Paul Eric Feuden Bat Esther, Shelley Newmark, Diane Axelrod, Gabriella Rose Spicer, and Dina Bat Chana. In addition to the names that we just shared, if there are other names that you would like to add for those that are in the room with us tonight, we'll start on this side of the room and work to the back, and then this side of the room and to the back, and just ask that you raise a hand, and so I make sure I don't miss anybody. In addition, we'll welcome other names to be added by those that are watching on our stream or on our Zoom as well. And we'll turn to page 371 as we sing together in the Misha Berach, led by Cantor Lauren, in the middle of the page.
Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu, may the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha Berach Imotenu Bekor HaBracha Lavotenu, bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirits, and let us say, Amen.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You can take a little bit of a break. So, of course, I think we're all coming into this Shabbat particularly, let's use the word, despondent. At the very least, we should be shattered. We should be struck by the absurdities and the horrors that we've seen unfold first, really, last week in Buffalo. And this, of course, is a long string of situations and circumstances that each time we find ourselves back in this place, what seems like having the same conversation and asking ourselves, what is our response? How do we respond to this kind of atrocity? How do we respond to the taking of life, first based on skin color, and then this week based on rage and anger of a sad individual who most likely did not ever receive the kind of support that an individual like that needs? And of course, we see what happens when it's this easy to get access to guns that can take the lives of men and women, children, elderly, indiscriminate in an instant. And regardless of what one may say about the ability to counteract that violence with more violence, we see that is not reality. It's a fallacy. And it hurts. It fundamentally hurts. And it forces all of us, it ought to force all of us, to sit in attention and to consider, as we sit here in our space, on our time, in our sacred space and time, to especially consider what this means for us as the Jewish people as a whole and as Jewish citizens of this great country with a terrible problem. And as I was thinking about tonight and thinking about what to say, I actually had the memory of something that happened when I was younger, which, I've had various feelings about since its original incidents, but all the more prescient, I think, for this moment. And it's going to sound almost silly at first, but I hope by the end will make sense why it struck me this week on a very personal kind of level. And I think back to when I was in high school. I was about 15, probably 16 years old. And my birthday happened to coincide with another good friend of ours. And he decided that, we were going to go as a group, we'd go paintballing. Okay, for those that aren't familiar with what paintball is something described usually as a sport in which, people of all ages, including children, shoot each other with guns that have little pellets that are filled with paint. And, while there can be occasionally an accident or somebody hurt by it, for the most part, it's considered a sort of innocuous sport. And so I very excitedly told my parents, especially my father, that I was going to be doing this weekend. And for those of you that know my father, you can imagine what his response was. An unequivocal no. And no matter how much I reasoned, no matter how much I argued, it was a no. And it was a no for a very clear reason, at least in his mind, one that was less clear to me then, but is now empirically clear, which is that when we create a circumstance in which children look at something that is a mimic of the reality, and that reality is something that can take lives, when we allow children, teenagers like myself, to engage in the sport, engage in the activity, especially without any kind of context or awareness of what it is connected to, the danger, at least to my father, was one that I would grow up to be somebody who didn't treat these tools, these weapons, as things that can take a life. Okay, whatever they may be painted or whatever they may look like, however much we may try to make them look like a facsimile, ultimately speaking, the action is the same. And his concern as a parent may have been extreme. At the time, it seemed ludicrous to me. It seemed that he was, at the very least, overstepping. But at the most, I think, maybe as a young person, that he was simply misunderstanding the entire conversation. And now, as I said, I see that especially now through a very different lens. And I think, of course, as a trained teacher, as somebody who spent more of my life than not at this point in classrooms with students, right, looking at what happened this week, and of course, being a parent of two young children, one of which who is in elementary school here, it obviously hits in a very personal kind of way. But it's not just for those of us that still have children or those of us that are teachers or have been teachers. Every single one of us should look at this circumstance and be agitated at the very least. And to start asking ourselves the questions of how did we get to this place and what do we do to get away from it? How do we make some kind of substantive change in our reality? As it happens, this week's Torah portion, which is known as Bechukotai, is really about statutes, about laws, and in particular, a listing of what good things come when we follow God's expectations, commandments, and what really, truly terrible things can result if we don't. And Rabbi Sachs, Zichrono Livracha, writes actually, and wrote years ago, this is him posthumously in sharing his commentary, he wrote a really powerful piece which was completely unintended to coincide with the events that took place this week, but I think speak very loudly to exactly what it is that we're feeling. And he titled this, The Politics of Responsibility. And I want to share a little bit of it with you this evening. So as I said, the basic concept of this portion is really, again, about rules, and if we follow them or if we don't follow them. And the way we think about that as Jews is what we call brit, of covenant, that the relationship between us and God is structured in a certain kind of way that we describe again in Hebrew as brit and in English as covenant. So Sachs writes, unlike other conceptions of history or politics, covenant sees nothing inevitable or even natural about the fate of people. Israel will not follow the usual laws of the rise and fall of civilizations, he writes. The Jewish people were not to see their national existence in terms of cosmology written into the structure of the universe, immutable and fixed for all time, as did the ancient Mesopotamians and Egyptians, nor were they to see their history as cyclical, a matter of growth and decline. Instead, it would be utterly dependent on moral considerations. If Israel stayed true to its mission, it would flourish. If it drifted from its vocation, it would suffer defeat after defeat. Only one other nation in history, writes Sachs, has consistently seen its fate in similar terms, namely the United States of America. Sachs then goes on to quote John Scar's Legitimacy and the Modern State, which writes as follows, and this is a reflection actually on the period of the Civil War here in our great country, and it says, "We are a nation formed by a covenant," referring to the United States, "by dedication to a set of principles, and by an exchange of promises to uphold and advance certain commitments amongst ourselves and throughout the world. Those principles and commitments are the core of American identity, the soul of the body politic. They make the American nation unique and uniquely valuable among and to the other nations. But the other side of the conception contains a warning very like the warning spoken by the prophets of Israel. If we fail in our promises to each other and lose the principles of the covenant, then we lose everything, for they are we. This, says Sachs, is statehood as a matter not of power, but of ethical responsibility. And he ultimately argues, as our tradition argues time and time again, that part of a covenantal relationship is an expectation of restriction, of expectation of responsibility, of consideration of facts beyond just what it is that we think we need for ourselves or those closest to us. We live, in essence, in an ecosystem of sorts, one in search constantly of an equilibrium, a balance between responsibility, control, various forms of restriction, and at the same time, freedom. Freedom to make choices, freedom to live. The other bellwether word of our great country being liberty. And so often we hear as a counter-argument to control that we will take away that liberty and that freedom if we create any kind of laws, any kind of restrictions, anything that causes the access to guns in this country to be even incrementally harder, let alone something that we can, quote-unquote, refer to as common sense. And Sachs anticipates this refrain and this response to hold, quote, freedom and liberty above all other consideration. And he says that this is creating a false dichotomy, creating on one hand freedom and liberty, on the other control and restriction. And he says this is false, and there may be rules, limitations, expectations, but the freedom to choose is still present for our ancestors as it is for us today. Quote, "I brought you from slavery to freedom," says God, "and I empower you to be free. But I cannot and I will not abandon you. I will not intervene in your choices, but I will instruct you on what choices you ought to make. I will teach you the Constitution of liberty," says Sachs. The first and most important principle, he says, is this. A nation cannot worship itself and survive. Sooner or later, power will corrupt those who wield it, and if fortune favors it and it grows rich, it will become self-indulgent and eventually decadent. Its citizens will no longer have the courage to fight for their liberty, and it will fall to another, more Spartan power. If there are gross inequalities, says Sachs, the people will lack a sense of the common good. If government is high-handed and non-accountable, it will fail to command the loyalty of the people. None of this takes away your freedom. It is simply the landscape within which freedom is to be exercised. You may choose this way or that, but not all paths lead to the same destination. Self-worship on a national scale leads to totalitarianism and the extinction of liberty. It took the loss of more than 100 million lives in the 20th century to remind us of this truth. One of the most profound contributions Torah made to the civilizations of the West, says Sachs, is this, that the destiny of nations lies not in the eternalities of wealth or power, fate or circumstance, but in moral responsibility. The responsibility for creating and sustaining a society that honors the image of God within each of its citizens, rich and poor, powerful or powerless alike. Sachs draws this from, as I said, our Torah portion, but not just our Torah portion, our entire Torah. If you study the words of the Torah, of the prophets, of the writings, if you study the words of the rabbis in the Talmud, consistently they come back to the same basic ideas, that we live in a society together. We are obligated to one another. And that the basis of our union, the basis of this country's union and sense of self, is not in power, not in the ability to overthrow the government if one needs to, not even in the sense that one has to protect one's family or borders and therefore need weapons at any time and of any caliber in any circumstance, but that we really have a basis for a relationship to each other that should be based on principles born out of our shared traditions, and in particular our shared religious traditions, which spend a tremendous amount of time trying to instill in us the belief that we are responsible to each other, and that one's ideas of liberty or freedom do not sort of overwhelm or outlast or out-significant the lives of people, let alone the lives of children. And in the end, we are all in some way or the other to blame because we've allowed it to not just get to this point. It got to this point years ago. And every time we come back with the same kind of response. We throw our hands up and we say, what are we to do? The reality is, guns are not going away in this country. Certainly not tomorrow, not the day after, not any time in the immediate sense. We have to figure out within our own self, and this means engaging in hard conversations, very likely with people that we know, maybe even ourselves, within our community and without, in which we go back to basic questions. What does life mean to us? What is the value of a life? It cannot be worth less than a firearm, than a piece of ammunition, and even less than a concept that we all hold dear, which is a sense of freedom and liberty. One of the great misnomers, the great misunderstandings of these concepts is that somehow or another, freedom and liberty are disassociated from our religious tradition. We believe in Judaism that we have choice. This parsha, many parshas, haftarahs, we have this conversation all the time. God presents us with choices, blessings and curses, laws to follow, both to, in the positive degree, things that will make our lives better, and things to avoid because they will make our lives worse. And if we are not in covenant with each other, which clearly in this country we are not right now, and maybe we never were, at least not to the degree that we hope or wish, then some of our initial work has to be getting back to a point in which we can at least agree on the primacy and the divinity of life, the central concept that we all live in the hopes that we will succeed, that we will be healthy, that we will be happy, that we can go into institutions like synagogues and churches and mosques and schools and bars and supermarkets and all of the other places in which a horrible shooting like this have taken place without fear for the ease with which somebody who is angry or upset about any number of things can go and purchase a gun that was never intended for a regular person to be able to have access to and to be able to take life with such ease. I get frustrated, as I'm sure all of you do. We hear this phrase all the time, about thoughts and prayers. Our thoughts and prayers go to the family. Our thoughts and prayers go to the community. And of course, our first reaction is thoughts and prayers are worth about zero in a circumstance like this. But I'm going to take something of a contrarian view on that and say, yes, vacuous thoughts and prayers, performative thoughts and prayers that are about people, saying something perfunctory. These things are indeed worthless. But perhaps actually what we need to do is think a little bit more and pray a little bit more in the sense of actually spending time with what our tradition says about the sanctity of life. Open our prayer book. You will not see a single page in our prayer book that says, go out and take life. You will see many examples of its antithesis. It's not to say that Judaism doesn't have a sense of self-defense. Certainly it doesn't say anything about the need for militaries to exist or for wars to be fought. Those are part of our tradition as well. But that's not what's happening down the street in the school. That's not what's happening when somebody needs to go and get groceries. None of these are acceptable circumstances under God or under the absolute best aspirations of what this country ultimately stands for. And I think at this point, we need to get beyond the catharsis of it and get to action. And so I do want to share some information that is at least an initial step that we are doing here in Sag Harbor, which is, thanks to Leah Oppenheimer, our wonderful Hebrew School Director Emeritus, have pulled together what will be a gathering on Monday next to the parade that will take place in Sag Harbor, located at the Windmill. And there'll be an opportunity to write letters. Both letters, we hope, of change to our representatives here in the state of New York, and also letters to the communities that have been affected, to the people that are suffering. And while these letters may seem insignificant or they may seem like they're not going to make any kind of change, these are the steps we need to take. These are the choices that we need to decide upon. This is ultimately speaking what our tradition, our God, our Torah ultimately command of us in moments like this. Incremental steps they may be, but they are steps nonetheless. If we give into despondency, if we give into a sense of a fait accompli, we are not living up to our responsibilities of the covenant, for certain. As Sachs points out at the very beginning, there is nothing inevitable. Our tradition has said that from the beginning. There is nothing inevitable about any of it. God gives us some direction, but we have to make the choices. And we as a community, I think, really need to be at the very forefront of this conversation. As I said, guns may not go away tomorrow, but we can do things to restrict their access, things that will make it hard, if not impossible, for what we have seen play out in the last week and over the last several decades to take place. We can do this, but we have to commit ourselves to the action. Take whatever steps you can. Join us on Monday. Do other things that you know are already in your wheelhouse. And if you yourself are somebody who is supporting the idea of free, unfettered access to guns, the only thing I will say to you is please, please, study our sacred texts more. Study them with me. I can think of about 1,000 different examples. As I said, Torah, prophets, writings, Talmud, Midrash, everything. I can think of more examples to suggest that we are in the wrong direction. And we need to make a change. And I invite you to consider how you're going to play a role in that as this Memorial Day passes, this weekend passes. Let us not get too complacent and too comfortable. Find a space in this time to get involved and to make the change that we need to see in the world. With that, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, and our heart extends to the families that are living through this horrible tragedy. So we'll invite Cantor Lauren up to the bima as we mark the counting of the Omer. And in this time period, again, we are given sacred space to really consider in preparation for Shavuot and in preparation for us imagining ourselves at Sinai receiving the Torah for the first time, that these are special days and ones, again, that we should give our attention and our thought to. So I'll ask those who are in the position to do so to please rise as we turn to page 570, I believe. Let me just double check. 570, as Cantor Lauren leads us in the counting of the Omer.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sefirat ha'omer Hayom shehem shisha shavuot lamed.
Remain standing as we turn to page 586 at the bottom of the page, Aleinu L'Shabeach. Aleinu L'Shabeach Ladon HaKol Latet Gidula Liotzer Breshit Shelo asanu kigoye haratzot velo samanu kemishpechot ha'adama Shelo sama chelkenu kahem vegor aleinu kechol hamonam V'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim Lifnei melech malchei hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Page 591. V'nehemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz Bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad Ushemo echad. Remain standing as we turn to page 598. In preparation for reciting the Mourner's Kaddish, we of course think of all the lives that have been taken in the last few weeks in particular. We also add, as we are in Memorial Day weekend, a remembrance for all of the service members who have given their lives in defense of this country and its ideals. And of course, in our community this week, we're also remembering those who passed in our community in recent months. Dr. John Abderkin, Martin Blake, Faith Diskin, Linda Denath, Arlene Eber, Jay Fagan, Ellen Frank, Chaim Bear Greenwald, Arthur Grossman, Gerald Hirsch, Mark Joseph, Jane Beard Cass, Gertrude Katz, Deirdre Klein, Elaine Krotman, Emmanuel Kiprios, Leo Leibowitz, William Lippman, Audrey Lubo, Sandra Tromberg Luongo, Morty Lynn, Nancy Nagel, Harry Olstein, Jeannie Rubin, Howard Schreier, David Sent, Anita Sheldon, Alan Silver, Marlise Silverberg, Blanche Sklar, Rita Sandra Snyder, and Matthew Adam Zimmerman. We also mark the artsites that occurred during the last week for Ruth Bitterman, Jack Berger, Sylvia Burt, Jewel Gumbel, Hyman Heller, Ava Hesse, Samuel Horowitz, Aaron Knopp, Charlotte Kohlbrenner, Beatrice Kunken, Samuel Lewis, Harriet Roth, Lisa Scheinswit, Sam Siegelwax, Morris Simon, Blanche Stiglitz, Samuel Teller, Laura Weiss, and Alexander Wexler. In addition to the names that we just shared, if there anyone in the room who's saying Kaddish that we didn't mention a loved one? We'll invite those at home to add the names of your loved ones as well as we join together in the Mourner's Kaddish on page 598. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Be'alma divrach yirutei ve'amlich malchutei v'chayechonu v'yomechonu v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agalav izman kariv v'imru Amen.
Amen.
Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'li'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudsha b'richu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma v'imru Amen.
Amen.
Yehei shalama Rabbah min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen.
Amen.
Zichronam livracha, may every one of their memories be for a blessing.
Amen.
Please be seated. Shabbat shalom, everyone. I know it's a somber ending to our service, so announcements is always a bit of a tough transition because announcements are again about life, and we have to hold both of these things in the same kind of space and the same kind of way. And I think especially for Shabbat, this is a great opportunity for us always that when we're having real existential challenges, sometimes returning to our essence is the best way to figure out the way forward. So you can join us tomorrow for services, and tomorrow morning will be our first opportunity back for those that want to join us in person. We'll be meeting in the chapel next door. All the same COVID rules apply as they do for Friday nights. You can join us at 9:30, and if not in person, on Zoom, on our website, on YouTube, or on Facebook. And of course, to join us for Torah study beginning at 12 o'clock, which will remain on Zoom, certainly for the time being. I also want to remind everyone that Ruth Joseph's book group will be starting up for its summer season this Sunday at 11 o'clock. It's not too late to join. If you're interested, please email Ruth directly. If you don't know how to do that, you can contact me and I will put you in touch with her. Also, a reminder that in honor of Memorial Day and remembrance of Memorial Day, the temple office will be closed, so there are no meetings or classes. But as I mentioned, for those that are in Sag Harbor and would like to join, from basically about 8:30 anytime until 11 o'clock, we'll be at the windmill. Leah will be sort of leading it, and a few different opportunities and ways to connect as a community and to remember those that have had their lives so callously taken. But at the same time, to be very cognizant and aware that the Memorial Day Parade in Sag Harbor is special in itself. It is a memorial in its own right, and so it'll be respectful of what is going on, but again, to cause all of us to really consider, again, our place in this country's history and its future. So again, that will be Monday morning. To note, coming up this week, on Wednesday, our wonderful Alan Levin here, not too far away from becoming a rabbi himself, will continue his wonderful class on the Jewish holidays, this time focusing, as I mentioned, we are very close to the holiday of Shavuot, so that is 6 o'clock on Wednesday. You can sign up, even if you've missed the other classes. Alan will absolutely happily have you, I'm sure, and it's a great opportunity to learn and to prepare for Shavuot. Also, a reminder, on Thursday, June 2nd, there is a docent-led private tour of the Parish Art Museum in Southampton, followed by lunch on the terrace. Please contact Toby Spitz for details. Again, that is June 2nd at the Parish Art Museum. We also want to remind everyone that beginning next week, next Shabbat in the evening, we will welcome the holiday of Shavuot, as we traditionally do with Tikkun Leil Shavuot, an opportunity for some learning to prepare us for receiving the Torah again on Sunday morning. As we've done for the last few years, we're going to partner with our friends at the Jewish Center of the Hamptons across town in East Hampton, and my friend Rabbi Josh Franklin, and our member, Rabbi David Wyman. Three of us are going to take turns teaching beginning at 7 o'clock. It'll be hosted in person at JCOH or online, and all that information should have been in the e-blast this week. You just have to make sure, if you're coming in person, to follow their protocols as ours, and to make sure that you register ahead of time. All that information, again, should have been accessible, but if you have any questions, you can let me know. So again, that will be Saturday night at 7 o'clock. And then Sunday at 10 o'clock, we'll have a Zoom-based service only for Shavuot, which includes the Yizkor Memorial Service as well. Beyond that, those are my initial announcements, but a lot of stuff really coming up, a lot of wonderful things coming up in June, and then in July and August as we move through the summer. And a reminder again that every Friday night, we hope, if the weather is more accommodating tonight, then we'll be outside right in front of the Whalers Church, and if not, we'll be inside, and we'll try to give everybody a heads up for that decision with ample time. And starting in July and August, we'll also have our Shabbat by the Bay service back in action, which is designed really for everyone, but especially focused on young families with young children. And that'll be at Havens Beach beginning at 5 o'clock, I believe. So with all of that said, we'll close our service this evening, which has become a tradition of ours over many years, which is to end with God Bless America, which is on page 680. And a reminder that as is always the case, right, in our national hymns and national anthems, we sing of our highest aspirations. The gap between where we are now and where we want to be may be great, but we never give up on what we aspire to. And of course, knowing that these words were penned by Irving Berlin, a proud Jewish citizen of this country, someone who saw in it the best possible qualities and tried to express them in a way that all of us, regardless of our background, regardless of our the things that tear us apart, to focus on this idea that we live truly in a blessed land. And despite the fact that there is blight, that blessing remains. But we have, as I said, work to do, significant work to do. So we say this both with reverence, with remembrance for those that gave their lives in defense of the best parts of our country, and, as I said, of a hope for reaching to a place where right now feels far away. So I'll invite you to rise. We're on page 680, and Cantor Lauren will lead us again, and please join with us if you can.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
You remain standing for Kiddush on page 123. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam morei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'hatzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava u'vratzon inchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikrae kodesh Zecher letziat Mitzrayim, Kivanu v'acharta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, ve'shabbat kodshecha, ve'ahava u'ratzon inchaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Amen. L'chaim.
To life, to life, to
Amen.
life. If we take one teaching away from tonight, that is our focus. Preserve life. Preserve life. Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and may it be a meaningful Memorial Day weekend for all of you, and look forward to seeing you in the future. Oh yeah, thank you, Bonnie, for a reminder. If you can, please bring your prayer books back up to Bob and Josie on your way out. It'll make their lives much easier, and we'll make sure we don't confuse prayer books, which I'm sure could get very confusing. A longer story, but it's not itself a Jewish custom. Well, I know, but that's understandable. I heard that. Yeah. Right. A lot of times, right. But I would tell you, Shelley. Shelley would have as much, to say that as I would. Not in opposition to the fight. It's hard to. Yeah, right. No, I understand. And it was a wonderful story. It's hard to convince our guys that some of the things that we loved about it, it doesn't quite translate. But, oh, that's the least important part. I think it's just more about, sort of getting teenagers to consistently show up with anything.
I do that all the time.
Hey, you take care of yourself.
That's so funny.
Oh, that's not fun at all.
I do it all the time. I'll think I see someone and I'm like staring at them and actually just kidding. Sorry.
What a small world.
Shabbat it's good to see you.
And I was serious when I wrote to you, by the way. Diana's too
Sorry?
she's too humble. But when I got into school, she was an upperclassman already. So she and a friend of hers, John, were like I was going to say, I don't think I've actually ever met them in person. Will you tell them that actually, even though I am a complete, pacifist, that was like my favorite movie when we were. Yeah, they said it's the most. And it's now covered in, a million other things. Oh yeah, for sure. That is really wonderful. And I think she seems to me she's really, really happy, right? I mean, she's like, because her first pulpit was an intense place to say the very least, Yeah, no, I understand everything, but who? Yeah, so who? Turn the microphone.